Remember sadly when I promised to kill you last?
That's what Matrix, you did!
I lied.
Hello folks and welcome back to another action movie review. And today we're going to be looking at the 1985 Arnold Schwarzenegger classic, Commando. So let's begin, shall we? Or as John Matrix would say, let's party. Arnold Schwarzenegger is Colonel John Matrix, a retired Special Forces commando. He has been living the quiet life for some time, until now. An old enemy of John's has returned and kidnapped his daughter, and the only way he can get her back is by meeting the demands of the kidnappers, by killing the president of a country called Valverde. However, John Matrix has other plans in mind, and is not a man to mess with, as he has his own particular set of skills that will make his enemies scream for mercy. Commando is one of those films that is fondly remembered by action movie fans, and it's not hard to see why. For one, you have Arnold Schwarzenegger as your hero in a role that's perfectly suited to him. Arnold may not be the greatest actor on the planet, but he's not a terrible actor either. And this film is not the friggin' Shawshank Redemption. With what skills Arnold has, he makes the most of them. He has a likable personality and charisma, a perfect delivery of humorous dialogue, and of course his physicality and screen presence is unforgettable. And this film pretty much personifies everything that makes Arnold awesome. The villains and henchmen are all memorable. Everything from their personalities and presentations stand out. We have Sully, who is the funny guy that Matrix promises to kill last, but we all know how that turned out. Sully is played by David Patrick Kelly, who has been in many films, most notably 48 Hours, The Crow, and The Last Man Standing. We also have the mostly silent but intimidating Green Beret, Cook, and little did he know that John Matrix eats Green Berets for breakfast. Cook is played by Bill Duke and would collaborate with Arnold again in Predator, and he would also go and join Carl Weathers in Action Jackson, and the list just goes on with his credits. He's been in a lot of stuff. And of course, we also have Captain Let Off Some Steam Bennet, who is basically pissed off at John Matrix for kicking him out of his unit. Bennet is played by Vernon Wells. Wells is probably best known for his appearance in Mad Max 2, The Road Warrior, and of course Commando, but the man's filmography is staggering with 130 credits to his name. We also have Arius, played by Dan Hedaya, who has appeared in many films also. I remember him from such films as Night at the Roxbury, Blood Simple, Alien Resurrection, and of course this film. While Hedaya plays the role of a dictator well, he is overshadowed by the others. We also have Rae Dawn Chong, who plays Cindy, a girl that John Matrix teams up with to help him get his daughter back. Chong's character at times is sort of annoying, but thankfully not grating, and she does actually help John Matrix out, so she's not a useless character. I haven't really seen Rae Dawn Chong in anything else other than Commando and the 1990 horror film Tales from the Dark Side, the movie. However, she too has a few credits to her name also. And finally we have Jenny, played by a very young Alyssa Milano, who would later be famous for her work in TV shows like Who's the Boss and Charmed. And to be fair, her performance is admirable. She doesn't get a whole lot of screen time, but she makes the most of it. Commando was directed by Mark L. Lester, who had previously directed Class of 1984, and after Commando he directed Showdown Little Tokyo, which I had previously reviewed. And like Showdown, Commando has that 50-50 balance of the humour and seriousness. The action scenes are well shot and edited, there's explosions, guns and fistfights galore. If there's any problems I had with the film, there's only two I can think of. One, the background score is just laughable. I don't know what the composer James Horner was thinking, but it just sounds awful. James Horner composed music for Aliens and Star Trek, and this is one of his weakest scores, if not his worst. The best bit of music in this movie is the song at the end credits, Fight for Love by Power Station. A typically 80s AOR song, but not a bad one to be honest. There are a lot of goofs in the final action scene. If you watch carefully, you can see the stuntmen pushing remote switches for bullet hits as they fall back. There's also springboards visible for the stuntmen being blown up by grenades. And of course, the obvious dummy standing outside in the scene where Matrix blows up a few small houses. But aside from these problems, I really enjoyed the film. Everything else is just fine. The action moves at a breakneck pace so it never feels slow or boring, and it builds up to one big climax. The villains are all memorable, the supporting characters are likeable, and of course Arnold is amazing in the film as he kicks ass and delivers funny lines with a smirk and dry delivery. The film isn't to be taken too seriously, so just sit back and have fun. This movie is essentially Taken before Taken even existed. Only difference is that it's more light-hearted and fun. And for what it is, I highly recommend it. The movie has been given a decent DVD release from Fox with extras and the director's cut of the film, which also puts in additional dialogue and violence that was not seen in previous releases of the movie. Commando did well on its release, making almost $58 million worldwide on a $10 million budget. However, Wikipedia's page lists that it made $220 million when you scroll down on its reception panel. I don't know which one is true or not, but it doesn't really matter. Bottom line, Commando made good business and got some critical acclaim. And considering 1985 was Sylvester Stallone's year with movies like Rambo 2 and Rocky 4 out at the time, Commando did pretty damn well. And considering Arnold came off the success of The Terminator a year prior, and then followed it up with this movie, Arnold's fanbase just began to grow. And since Commando 1 was a huge success, a sequel was immediately planned, simply called Commando 2, and this was around, I believe, 1987. However, Arnold wasn't interested in Commando 2, I'm guessing he just didn't want to emulate Stallone's Rambo franchise, so it just never happened. However, the script for Commando 2 was reworked, renamed and recast, and ultimately became a movie called Die Hard, which was released in 1988, another beloved action classic. Actually, imagine that for a minute. If Arnold Schwarzenegger made Commando 2, he essentially would be playing John McClane's character. Can you imagine what that would have been like? However, aside from all this, I think the writers were still hoping to make Commando 2 because I managed to find a script entitled Commando 2 online, and it's dated February 6th, 1989, and it was written by Stephen E. D'Souza, who wrote the first movie, and it was revised by Frank Darabont, who directed The Shawshank Redemption, Green Mile, and The Mist. Upon reading the script, I found out that it still maintains the humour found in the first film, but the plot is a little more ambitious, as it's not really a rescue film like the first time, but more of a story of betrayal, as John Matrix is basically offered another job by his mentor, General Kirby, who asks Matrix to join him on a mission. However, Matrix refuses, saying he just wants to live in peace with his daughter. But later on, Matrix discovers that Kirby was killed on the mission, and decides to investigate, and what he finds is Kirby had faked his death and joined a powerful drug syndicate. Now, my guess is they were probably hoping to get Arnold to make this film around 1990, but by then he was already busy with films like Kindergarten Cop and Total Recall, and I don't think Commando 2 was a high priority for him. So the script just sat around and never to be used for anything. Now it just remains a curiosity for fans of action films and Arnold Schwarzenegger fans. But overall, I give Commando 4 out of 5 stars. Highly recommended action film and worth adding to your collection. Thank you all for watching, folks, and stay tuned for more.